Hey, folks, here we are in the pre-show. The pre-show. For those of you joining us new anywhere else other than on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on YouTube, we do 3 minutes before we go live on the radio station. So that's coming up here pretty quick. And 3 minutes after the top of the hour, there's Ellery who wanted to say hi. How you doing? Give me a kiss. Good night. I love you. I'll see you later. Close my door, please, on the way out. Nope. All right. We'll see who all can gather on this show because we are not over on YouTube. We'll see what happens. And we're not on YouTube. I'll explain it a little bit during the show for those of you who would like to know what's going on. So you can join the show live over on my Facebook channel, and you can see it in several other places. So except for YouTube tonight. You can see it on the Subspace Odyssey YouTube if you want to go over there. But I'm not hooked up to that one, so be it, such as it is. So hey to everybody that's starting to gather. 3 minutes after we go live, primarily over on Facebook tonight. I've got it set so everybody should be able to see all the chat that's going on over via Facebook, which usually doesn't show everything you want to see. So hopefully I've been wrong about that because I read into that just a little bit. So if you want to join us live at 9:03, you can join over on the radio station, or you can stick around here and be able to see the show in other places. So if you can chat from your location, go ahead. There's Chuck Thurston. Usually YouTube has less rules than Facebook, but so be it. Yeah, I'll explain it a little bit when we go live in about 20 seconds. I'll kind of give you the lowdown on what that was all about because I've been having a little back and forth with YouTube over the last few days. And of course, it just drags out anyway. So here we go. We're going to go dark. We'll be back in a few moments. Hang on.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the program. This is Scotty Roberts, and you're listening to and watching the Intrepid radio broadcast. We're coming to you live via the radio station, which is Subspace Odyssey Radio. And you can go to subspace.radio. You can also go to Odyssey, ODYSY, radio.com. I think I got those all straight now. And that's where you can hear the show in its audio format only. You used to be able to come over to YouTube. You will again one of these days. I've been suspended over there for disseminating false information. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Hey to everybody who's gathering. Chuck Thurston, Pat Donnelly, Roy Palvido. Good to see you all. And as everybody figures out that we're in a different place tonight than YouTube, because we did not broadcast Friday, because as I was getting ready to broadcast was when I found out that I couldn't do the show over on YouTube. So I just canceled the show for Friday. We didn't do a Sunday morning show. It's Sunday, which is off the record, kind of not the main Intrepid radio program that does not broadcast over on Subspace Odyssey, and it's just kind of an informal time. But I didn't do either of those because we couldn't get onto YouTube. I've been arguing with YouTube a bit, back and forth, and we'll see what comes of it. Probably nothing. So let me tell you about this before we really get started. So what's going on with YouTube? Why did they cut my broadcast for a week over there? Well, there was a point, what was it? What I'm finding is that YouTube Either somebody is going in, there's trolls that'll go in and report you for saying something, or they have bots that go in and start reaching back. I have some things that are 2 and 3 years old that I find I get copyright hits on for playing a piece of music or something on YouTube. And that comes that far out, they start reaching back. And when they start seeing things that they disagree with, that's not part of their narrative, or they say is against their company policy, they will start putting out the feelers. And they found the show, it wasn't too awfully long ago, but do you remember the show I did about 5 or 6 weeks ago on, it was called Bragg's Folly? And I had a picture of Trump looking over his shoulder at you, kind of like this, in an orange jumpsuit. And he was talking about the indictment, the impending indictment that time by New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And somewhere, and I got to be really careful of my words here. No, I don't, because I'm not on YouTube tonight. Somewhere along the way, in the captain's cabin, Professor Bauer was in, and a couple of other people were in. I think Field Guy was there, and who is right there, Brian Turnage. Good to see you, Field Guy. That's Field Guy, in case any of you didn't know, because he's got to tune in through Facebook, so it shows his real name, his secret identity. Well, anyway, we were all chatting up a storm, and Professor Bauer said something about, well, yeah, there's the Department of Defense. There was a 2019 document that said the Department of Defense was hiring for COVID research in Ukraine, back before we had labeled it as COVID. Now, somebody else came along and said, I think the facts on that are they were hiring for research, but didn't name it COVID till later. I don't know what the exact thing is, but that was not even the topic of discussion. That was just a sidebar. And I watched the video to look for it, and that's the only place I found any mention that mentions anything of COVID. And then we went on to other topics right away. We didn't even deal with that particular topic, as far as I can remember. And I couldn't see any around in the few minutes before, few minutes afterwards, where anything, because the conversation got steered into another direction right after he said that. And so what I was tagged for at YouTube was disseminating false or misleading medical information. And I wrote to them and I said, now, we didn't even talk about that. I didn't even remember that Professor Bauer had made that statement. And so I said, we didn't talk about COVID at all. It was about the indictment. And so I looked back through and I scanned through and I found that one line by Professor Bauer. And so I wrote YouTube back again. I said, by the way, the one line that was mentioned wasn't even talking about medical topics. He was talking about DOD hiring for research. I said, how is that medical disinformation or misinformation? And they sent me along. Here, you got to hear how this stuff gets talked about. Let's see if I've got it here right up front. Maybe I do. Let's see if it's in here. GoDaddy, YouTube community. YouTube removed your content. Here was their original thing. Our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our medical misinformation policy. We've removed the following content from YouTube, Bragg's Folly. We know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. If content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal, which I did, and we'll take another look. And then it said it was a hit against my channel. Your channel now has one strike. You won't be able to do things like upload, post, or live stream for 1 week. And this was on 3 days ago, was when this came in, Friday. And it says a second strike will prevent you from publishing content for 2 weeks. 3 strikes in the same 90-day period will result in your channel being permanently removed. So that would mean if I had 3 strikes like that because somebody who called into the show or somebody in the chat room mentioned something that's against policy and I can't appeal it, I could lose 1,000 shows that are archived over there. And trying to take time right now to download 1,000 shows is pretty ridiculous. To make sure I have them. I have some of them, but I don't have them all. I do them live. So now, I got a subsequent. We've reviewed your appeal for the following: Bragg's Folly. We reviewed your content carefully and have confirmed that it violates our medical misinformation policy. We know this is probably disappointing news and blah, blah, blah. We won't be putting that video back up on YouTube. If your appeal was a warning, blah, 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 and they go into their thing. Then I got one more email because I followed up to that. Let's see. I don't think I inadvertently. Here you go. I wrote to them, people that I had dealt with before. Hi, Scotty. I hope you're safe and well. I understand that you need help in removing your community guideline strikes from your channel. That's not what I asked. I told them to review it. That's got to be very frustrating to know you received this strike, and want to know, and you can tell it's a form letter, received these strike, and wants to know how to resolve them. I can see how difficult this has been. I know how important this is for you, so I'll be handling your case from here. Warning, we understand mistakes happen and you don't mean to violate our policies. That's why the first violation is typically only a warning. You only get one warning, and this warning remains on your channel. Your channel got the warning on December 14th of 2022. I don't remember what that one was for. This is beyond the initial warning of July 7th, 2022, which has been resolved. So I resolved that one. So strikes, if you have a single strike, you want to blah, 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 they go on to this. Then they say this: on a lighter note, you can appeal each individual strike, which I can see that you did. You can learn more about how to appeal at the community guideline strikes here at this link. You can only appeal for 30 days after the warning. Note, deleting your content doesn't remove a strike. We may also issue a community guideline strike on deleted content. So what they're saying is, even if we take your video down and remove the egregious content, you still committed the act of violating our policy, and that goes as a strike against you. So, in other words, toe the line or we'll take you out. Now, I do have to make a note here. It's important that places like YouTube, Facebook, any kind of social media platform has standards. If you wanted to get on and talk about pedophilia from a user's point of view, you're going to get tagged. You get tagged on my own site, and I'd take you down. And so I understand there are standards that need to be applied. However, when it comes to things like COVID, things like politics and all of those things, if you disagree with the narrative, there's very little way to get around it. The narrative that is established by, because as you and I all know, there's opinions on all sides of all of these issues. But if you even talk about the opinion, guess what happens? You get tagged for misleading medical information. So Chuck says, if people are going to get pissy about false information on social media, rather than just ignoring the information based on better knowledge, that's a rather negative on them. Rather negative on them, not you. And I agree with that, Chuck. Absolutely. And we didn't even discuss the ins and the outs of the C word. And see, I even have to be careful on Facebook. You start mentioning the C word too much, you're going to get flagged. So let me ask you, is it too much rhetoric on my part to say this is Fascism 101? This is an introduction to it. We will control what you say. You cannot express an opinion even on what we said you can't talk about. So you can't express an opinion. Say the 2020 election, depending on where you came down on that side of that. Those words might even get tagged, and somebody's going to look at my video because they're going to want to know if I'm talking about promoting that Trump actually won, which I'm not doing here. But talking about it, you have to be very careful that the organization doesn't penalize you for expressing an opinion. You can say, my opinion is that this was the actual outcome. My opinion is that that was the actual outcome. But you can't express but only one opinion, because if you do, you're violating the standards of this social media platform. So, and this is where they've run into problems with being, well, you're not just a platform. You are liable for upholding the Second Amendment. Now, here's the thing I have with YouTube and Facebook and all those places too. These are all companies that were established under the protections of constitutional law in this country. They have the guarantee of the First Amendment. They have the guarantee to express themselves the way they want to. And they utilize those constitutional protections of our rights to create what they created. In other countries, you don't have that constitutional protection. And so you might end up with a lot of trouble. So the way they've worked around that is that, well, this is our community standard. You can't talk about these certain items, and they're usually items that are promoted in the narrative of the ownership, if you will, the entity of one of these big social media companies. And if you violate that standard, that policy, you can get whacked pretty hard. And so I've had it happen on Facebook. I've been in Facebook jail before. But if you notice by my speech, I tend to be very diplomatic. You know what my opinions are on things, and I make them strong, but I also try to present other sides. I also try to say, it's like when I talk about faith issues. Here's a prime example. I would say, I was Christian. I still am Christian. I am somewhat Christianized and less Christian than I was before. I'm more pagan, or I'm more, I have different sets of beliefs that I incorporate. Pagan, just an overall umbrella to get through that explanation simply. And I say, look, I don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities. Here's what I believe about biblical theology. Here's what I believe about pagan theology, if you could call it that, spirituality. And so I try to not play both sides. I try to be diplomatic for the sake of not offending people by what I say, because you can offend Christians by saying, I don't know that I fully believe that particular article in scripture anymore. You can offend pagans. Pagans are a little less offendable, but you call them an acorn shaker of the week. That's what I refer to as kids, young people who are pagans in revolt against their parents' Methodism as they grew up. So they're acorn shakers of the week, I call them. They got to find something that's different. So that's by way of example of the way I try to handle myself in issues. And I never try to degrade anybody in public unless they're being degrading. I might say, oh, come on, you can think a little better than that, might be a response I might throw out there. So this is, we all have freedom of speech, says Chuck. We also have the right to ignore things we disagree with. I ignore what I choose, my freedom to do so. I rather take offense to someone trying to protect me. That's it. So you've got the nanny social media is telling you, we can't let you opine about this particular topic because it might hurt people who don't really know any better. Well, those people who don't know any better are people who I think voted in the last president because they don't know any better. So there's an opinion for you right there. They don't do their research. They don't look into anything. They're fed the lines and they're fed the narrative and they regurgitate it. Now, what places like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter used to do was pretty much say, we have these policies, and if you violate them, we'll just remove you. We'll remove your content. You can't talk about that. And you see the way that letter was stated? We know on a lighter side, and we know it's disappointing to get strikes like this and so on, but your whole site and everything you've put up there for 10 years at least, in my case, is in jeopardy if I say the wrong thing. It all disappears. And so you tell me, you look up the definitions of fascism, look how fascism worked. Now, fascism, as we look at it historically, was generally a governmentally imposed thing. So here's the question. What happens when you have a company that has the right to be fascist? They have the right to express themselves. You got that. But there's a fine line that gets crossed when you have billions of users and you're imposing something that goes by only one narrative. That's where it starts becoming dicey. Are you then a publishing company or are you a social media platform? So in social media, what I've learned is that on YouTube and Facebook, you cannot just speak your opinions if they happen to just get a little too close to that line. So Professor Bauer, love him to death. He didn't do anything wrong. He just brought up the DOD thing. And whether it's right or wrong, we never even got to discuss that. He just brought it up. And that constituted me disseminating misleading medical information over on YouTube. And YouTube, they're wrong about that. But they don't have time to go into every single case. I'm trying to get them to go into this case a little deeper, but there it is. Daisy McHenry says, does 1984 seem to be closing in? Sure it does. And folks, if you don't know what 1984 is, go read that George Orwell novel, and you'll get the idea. So 2 for the price of 1 and strikes, says Brian. Yeah. They don't review anything. It's third party who reviews and blocks. There you go. And so Professor broke YouTube. Yeah, inadvertently. So that's where I say, there are things I can't talk about. So what is the net result of all of this? I can't express my opinion about certain things. I have no constitutional right that guarantees that YouTube, in their policies, won't delete me or won't punish me for saying the things they disagree with. Then again, they don't come out and say, we are a particularly liberal progressive thing, and if you don't follow our lead, we're gonna nix you. So that's what's kind of going on here. That's why this has happened, and that's why we're not on YouTube for the week. And that is also a totally different thing that I'm doing when I'm going to be moving my show to Patreon. And that's coming soon. Those of you who are on my Facebook and my Instagram, you saw the new backdrop. It's that wall over there is all being prepped for doing the new show. We're going to just take the desk and turn it that way. We're going to broadcast with that wall as the background. So all the swords are gone. They're all incorporated into the new background. It's going to be less cluttered, and it's kind of cool. So I actually kind of like it. And here, let's see if I can show you. Since you're listening, if you're watching and not just listening, if you go all the way over there, there it is. There's part of it. That's going to be the new backdrop for the show. And of course, it'll be composed a little differently when you see it on the screen with the blue lights on it and, pulled a little bit further back out of there. So that's why, and the office is in total disarray because I had to take everything from that wall and pull it all out so I could do the painting over there. So that'll be interesting when we get into Patreon. I just have to get it set up. I got to get a few older videos put up there to show that we do have content that goes back several years. And so I'll be broadcasting from there in the very near future. And I'll make some announcements when that happens. We'll still be on the radio station. We will still be everywhere we need to be. We just will do very little. We can upload to YouTube, but I guarantee you, Patreon does not have the rules that Facebook and YouTube has. So I'm going to be a little freer with my speech over there. But if I put those up to YouTube, guess what happens? YouTube will flag them. I'll get another strike. They'll take down all my content. So I'll have to see how I'm going to handle that in the near future here. But there's that. Now none of that of the last 24 minutes, 21 minutes technically, is what tonight's content is about. I was going to talk, just do shorts or non-show stuff up there just to appease the YouTube gods. That's what I'm thinking, Brian, field guy. Just doing some shorts and throwing them up there. And so YouTube will become less about this show and more about little tidbits from the show, little clips and things like that, where you can click in and it'll have a link that says, you want to see the whole show? Go to my Patreon site. Now, I'm going to tell you this, folks, those of you who are listening, and I see we have fewer listeners tonight because maybe there's some people that aren't seeing exactly where they can click in and listen. At least this is what's showing up in my StreamYard site. So hopefully everybody's getting a chance to listen if they want to listen and being able to see this show. But the numbers are way down because we've made a switch like this for tonight. And I'm sure Chuck says, I'll be free to disagree with you over there, but you got to know that. I do, Chuck. And I love having you here, brother. Even though I disagree with a lot of the politics, we're friends. And I love having you here. So Patreon, by the way, I'm going to be charging for the show. There goes 90% of my listeners. There are a bunch of you here that are loyal to this show that would sacrifice $4 a month to listen to what would be tantamount to about 15 shows a month. And it may be even more as we go. There will be some pre-recorded shows. There will be some live shows. And Arlene says, I had a hard time getting in tonight. Sorry, Arlene. Yeah, it was kind of tough. I didn't have the direct link over there, so it was a little tough to do that. So since we're not on YouTube, we got a different link I had to put up. I said, just find me on Facebook and you'll be able to. So that's up there now. If you guys want to share that out for the remaining portion of this show, just share out there. Hey, come and listen to Scotty over here at this link. Just hit the share button over on. It's playing on my Facebook right now, so you can go over there and do that. It was worth it, says Arlene. Thank you, Arlene. I appreciate it. So that's all that happened with YouTube. I'm going to be phasing out YouTube as a going concern. And as Brian mentioned, it's going to be little clips and shorts and things I put up that don't violate their policy. And so I will not run the risk of being deleted and having all my videos deleted over there. Unless they find something else out in my past, which is what they do. They dig back 2 and 3 and 4 years ago. Oh, you said this thing back then. That's a hit. I go, well, I didn't know the policy existed back then. So we'll see what happens for the future of YouTube with my show. So we're going to Patreon. We're going to charge $4 a month. Now, if I put that in perspective, you could say $4 is less than a double Dutch chocolate with sprinkles and whipped cream and a cherry on top latte at Starbucks. So for less than about half the price of one of those at Starbucks, you can get every one of these shows over on my Patreon channel. Plus, there will be extra things we can do over there. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And so some people will balk at the fact that this has always been a free show and that I'm charging. You're worth $3. Thank you, Arlene. I appreciate that. So somebody might say, I ain't paying $4 I'll just go listen to this other guy over here. So, if you got the $4 a month, you'll see how to do it and you'll be able to get all the same content plus more. So I have 400 pennies somewhere, said Brian. Thank you. So yes, we are making the move to Patreon sometime in the next week or two. As soon as I get it all set up, it's almost all set up over there now. I've got to do a new intro video. The intro video I did sucked. I was tired from working the night shift, and I tried to look as good as I could and get the best, and it just was drab. I played it for my wife, Rainey, and I said, critique this. Would this draw you into this show as a free introductory video? It was about 2.5 minutes long, and she looked at it and she goes, about 10 seconds in, she goes, you already lost me. And so that's something I have to be very careful of. So I'm going to try to put up something a little more fun for an intro video. As a matter of fact, you can go take a look at it if you want. I'll give you the link right now in your spare time. Patreon, let's see. Let's see. It's still under. Oh, it's under Scotty Roberts. So you go to patreon.com/Scotty Roberts, and you'll see the show. And here, let me paste it in the. There's nothing there yet except an intro video, which I'm going to be replacing very quickly because I don't like it. And we're going to do it with the new background. That's what prompted me to create the new background and stuff like that. Randy said, "Oh, you're just too cluttered. Everything's too cluttered." She wants to remove all this advertising stuff on the sides and things like that. Thinks I need to do that, or at least pare it down a little bit. And so that'll be ready to roll soon. Now, all of that to say, we've got a totally different topic on for tonight. And let's get it started here anyway. And I want to ask you, this is not a smooth segue. It's just a segue. We're going now at 31 minutes after the top of the hour, going into the actual content of tonight's show, which is paranthropology or parathropology, however you want to say it. Anthropology. I started looking into this and doing a little research about the anthropological aspects of the paranormal. And you've got to admit that something that is as big as it is, and you call it pop culture, but in our culture, our society, the belief in the paranormal, the supernatural, and all of that, that is an anthropological event, if you will, a big event. And you were to look back on our society from the future, it's anthropology. It's how the people believed, how people reacted, how they lived. And so we're living, consider this, we're living in a very complicated period in relation to our understanding of extraordinary phenomena. Do you remember even 10 years ago, talking about the paranormal or ghosts got you pretty poo-pooed and patted on the head and sent for the door? Nuts, loopy. And yet we have found with the development of technology that is applied during paranormal investigation and the number of people doing it and the evidence that's mounting, it's this extraordinary phenomenon is becoming much more accepted. Now, naive, materialistic approaches are more assertive than ever. Those that have, I believe in this, and this happened to me and my aunt, and you're looking at anecdotal stories and things like that, and people assert their beliefs about them, but more than ever. And in anthropology and in the world more generally, you're seeing more and more of a rise in this. And at the same time, the taboos against admitting to the reality of the paranormal are weakening. You remember, there were sometimes scientists who you'd talk to and say, well, yeah, I believe in ghosts and that stuff. I've experienced it, but I can't say that. It's going to ruin my reputation out there. But you're seeing that those taboos are weakening. The walls are coming down. And there's a growing body of writing out there which takes the paranormal and the extraordinary very seriously, while bringing it to the same academic standards that any other subject matter might or would require. There are guys out there that are paranormal anthropologists, have their doctoral degrees. They went to school for anthropology and human psychology and all these things, and they wrote their theses for their doctorate on the anthropology of the paranormal. And so these are very well-educated people, if you will, not just somebody who goes out with a K2 meter and says, "Oh, I saw a green blip, which means there's a ghost." And so they stick themselves to rigid standards. And this is valuable. It's important. It's a really important development in understanding the paranormal, and it helps open the way to new modes of understanding in the sciences and the social sciences that won't reject scientific rationality, but expand that rationality so as to include more of the world of human experience. And I could direct you to, I think it's Paranthropology or it's anthology, Parathology. Paranthropology. I think it's .com. If you go there, there is a magazine that's put out. Um, let me just double check that. Paranthropology.com. Nope, that's not it. I'd have to find it and find it for you. But there's some really good material on that site. And it's a magazine, just like we did Intrepid. And it comes out in digital format, and you can read all their articles through there. And they're all linked up and everything. So I'll find that link before the captain's cabin is over. And we'll find a way for us all to view it and review it. And if you want to. Chuck Thurston said, in a room full of old African weapons and using an ultrasonic microphone, I recorded a male voice with a very distinctive accent, saying his name was Asafila, a Nigerian name. These are the things you get. If you look at my YouTube, I reposted an old memory. It just shows Rocky Stucci, Sarah Soderlin, and me. We were all in the wooded area, the forest down on the river beneath old historic Fort Snelling, where the site, which I've talked about several times on this show, the site of the Dakota concentration camp existed in 1862. And the site's not marked at all. There's just a placard out there, and there's a monument there that was put up by the Dakota tribe on state land there below the fort. And that monument, it's all built out of like big, it's almost like taking tree stumps, like telephone poles, and putting them all together in this very impressive monument. And that's standing down there to all those who died there. And it was after the Dakota Wars in the 1860s, early 1860s. So we were there, just like Chuck was talking about, a room full of old African weapons. We're on that site, which is all now bike paths and walking paths and things down below the fort there. And it's all on state land. And we were doing a spirit box. And I don't recall if we recorded it. It was just kind of spur of the moment. We went down there to walk and see the site to see if we could maybe do an official investigation there. And that's where we started getting, over the spirit box, we started getting voices. And some of these voices were in language we did not recognize. Reuben Fasthorse heard some of it. He says, I believe you're hearing Dakota. And but then some would come across in English. We would get children. We'd hear children singing. We heard children crying. We heard adults. It would sound like an adult woman crying. All kinds of voices, gruff, some of them. And there was just a plethora of voices coming through. And we're hearing certain words and keywords and that we could understand. And we asked some questions. And we were getting responses. Were you here during the time that the Dakota camp was here? A concentration camp. And yes, and we would hear some of these voices. And at the very end, as we're getting ready to sign off, and it was emotionally, Chuck, you know what this feels like, and others of you who have done some of these intense investigations like this, and you get that connection, that live connection with someone. The emotions were pretty high, and I said, as we were, and you've heard me say this one before, I said, we're going to leave now. And we were still, it was broad daylight. It was 3 p.m. And I said, we're going to leave now. And I said, is there anything you would like us to share with anybody out there? And a strong male voice came through and said, remember us. That's all it said. Rocky was there. Sarah was there. We all heard that. And very emotionally moving at the time. Now, we have not been back since then. Wait, maybe Rainey came with Rocky and I, or was, can't remember if Rainey was with us on that trip or not, or if we went back a second time. Now I can't remember because we do so much stuff. So Chuck says, chants, songs, interactive questions. Also the Indian using pidgin English to ask us questions. That's interesting stuff. Now, if that's not evidence, I don't know what is. And Chuck, we all are in our odd ways. I'm empathic. Rainy's psychic, and all of this, and Sarah definitely is. So this whole anomalous and very often perplexing phenomena that have not been explained in conclusive manner have been a part of the human experience for a very long time. You can go back ancient times, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and find ghost stories. And it's prevalent in Roman culture, Egyptian culture. We went through some of that stuff on this very show a couple of years ago. But the paranormal, or the spiritual, the supernatural, has been part of the human experience for a very long time. And through this time, such phenomena have been interpreted in different frameworks: supernatural, paranormal, religious, magical, etc., etc., etc. And this has contributed to the formation of various beliefs and fields of study that have individually dealt with and advanced theories and refined interpretations. So historically, a few researchers have endeavored into the unknown with an open mind and have found parallels between some manifestations and events. Although the contribution from these researchers has been a valuable one, it must also be acknowledged it's been limited. It's been very limited. A comprehensive or holistic perspective to the anomalous phenomena and its relationship to humanity and the environment has yet to appear. It really hasn't happened yet in full force. And so the way we as humans tend to form and hold on to our beliefs appears to be deterring our progress toward a solution or a conclusive answer on any of these things. So, because what happens? It's questioned, which is fine. You question things in order to research and study them. So the questioning leads to opening the doors or more questions. Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. Roy says, I appreciate your show, Scotty. Well, I appreciate you, Roy. Thank you very much. And like I said, for those of you looking, numbers are a little low tonight. I think it's a little hard to find the show tonight. By Wednesday night, I might have figured out a better way to put up a link to the show to go directly here. The YouTube is just easy for everybody. So it is on Facebook, though. If you're struggling and you can't find the show, it's on my YouTube channel playing live right now. I think there's about a minute delay over there. So I appreciate that, Roy. Chuck says, so as I scrape away at this coin from 250 AD, I'm wanting the many people who carried this coin to say hello. Hello, LOL. Oh, hell no, he says. Wouldn't that be interesting? Do you think that a coin, an 1850-year-old coin, could carry with it the presence of somebody? Could you connect with somebody? Wouldn't that be interesting? Set that experiment up, Chuck. Set that coin down and make that the focus of a little mini investigation and see what you come up with. I think that would be fascinating to hear. See what you come up with. So the objects, use objects as kind of trigger objects. So my purpose in this particular topic, paranthropology, is to encourage an open-minded, inclusive, multidisciplinary approach to anomalous phenomena. Meaning you can look at it from the spiritual belief side, you can look at it from the scientific side. There are ways to combine those things and make them work. And it would seem to me that would open up much greater discussion, proposal, and objective research. Looking for conclusive data on anomalies would take place, but this has seldom occurred. It seems as if open-mindedness is still scarce. You can be as open-minded as my rules and policies let you be, and then I will decry you. Meanwhile, research of related topics is becoming more strenuous, tedious, sometimes even confusing due to the overwhelming amount of information that's becoming available to us. And this information hasn't facilitated the explanation of the phenomena, but according to Horgan, and I've just got a note here, he's an author on some of these things. He wrote in 2003, Rational Mysticism, Dispatches from the Border Between Science and Spirituality, and it's published by the Houghton Mifflin Company out of New York. But Horgan said this in his book, The Perennial Philosophy, Postmodernism, Negative Theology, Transpersonal Psychology, Neurotheology, Gnosticism, and Neo-Shamanism all insist in their own ways that there's an irreducible mystery at the heart of things. And so does science. So all of that saying is that all these different approaches to examining phenomena, to examining paranormal research, if you will, everything, philosophy, postmodernism, negative theology, spirituality, church theology, neurotheology, Gnosticism, paganism, neo-shamanism, all of these things and many more contribute to one known common fact that we can boil it all down to. Take them all, put them all in a pot and boil it down. You're left with an irreducible mystery at the core that every one of these things looks at. Science does the same thing. And although no discipline has yet unveiled the mystery, they've all evoked one recurring element: believers and skeptics. But where are the unbiased and the open-minded who dispassionately and carefully consider all these alternatives? You have to be a believer or a skeptic, or is there some other gray area in between that looks at other alternatives? So even with the pseudosciences, where one would think researchers would keep an open mind, many have comfortably settled for a view that's remained unaffected by other equally or even more plausible alternative explanations. The extraterrestrial origin as an explanation for UFOs is an example of that. So you look at the whole ufological community, the ancient aliens community. They've settled on their own, if you will, theology of how things are supposed to work, and they've stuck to that. But now look, in his investigation on the subject, Keel, he noticed that, by the way, Keel, I want to tell you who he is. If you're not familiar with him, he's a writer, a speaker, John Keel. Way back, by the way, in 1975, he wrote The Mothman Prophecies, which they made that okay Richard Gere movie after his book. But he's a researcher of the paranormal. And he said back in 1970, so we're talking 50 years ago, he said, man's tendency to create a deep and inflexible belief on the basis of little or no evidence has been exploited. These beliefs have created tunnel vision and blinded many to the real nature of the phenomenon. Now, could you take that into, like the example I used? Can you take that into religion and spirituality? Has religion created a deep and inflexible belief on the basis of little to no evidence? Yeah, they have. Because the evidence is faith. It's what God or Jesus does in your heart. That's the evidence. The evidence of things not, what is it that Paul said? Faith is the substance of things not seen, the evidence of things hoped for. And that's what a lot of faith is based on, having very little evidence to go on, if none. It's a belief system. Put your faith in the belief system. So Keel said man's tendency to create a deep and inflexible belief on the basis of little or no evidence has been exploited by the paranormal. We've seen it for centuries with the church and with other religious beliefs. Ancient pocket lint, mostly. Hey, Michael. Good to see you, brother. Brian says their DNA is on, so maybe you can get some spirits. Can you lift DNA off of a coin, or would it all be vanished by then? Since the coin itself is not organic material, would the DNA adhere to that almost 2,000 years later? That's a good question, Chuck. I would like to know if you, and if it's not DNA, something that was possessed by somebody. This was, I don't know, so Thomas Jefferson's scissors. Would his DNA still be on it after 250 years? Or would you be able to say, he owned this? I could set this up and say, can you speak to me? It's possible. We've seen things like that happen. Now, even though Keel, in that quote I just gave you, observed this in the 1970s, it can be argued that it still applies in the present. What applies? That there's little or no evidence has set up deep and inflexible belief systems. And there are probably just a few ufologists who would consider an alternative explanation of the phenomenon. Rendell's suggests, and Rendell's, I'll tell you who he is. I've got my bibliography over here, so I can refer to some of these guys. I just referred to them by their last names. Jenny Rendell's wrote the book Alien Endgame with a question mark in Fortean Times back in 2013. And so she wrote, or she suggested, that they should end their search for beings that in the end appear to be illusionary. But even if the various anomalous phenomena or their interpretations are all but illusory, not illusionary, illusory, the effects on humanity are certainly not. And she said, I've come to the point, or come to see that the abduction phenomenon has important philosophical, spiritual, and social implications. And the same can be said about experiences of a religious, mystical, psychedelic, and paranormal nature. You look at alien abductions and then look at stories down through the centuries and the millennia even. Contacts with celestial beings. As I said when I wrote The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, my first foray into this in the written word, this kind of stuff. It's that perhaps, and maybe this is a lesson I learned from Star Trek in my childhood, where they said many times the peoples of a planet, or even our own culture, they'd say in our past, would view alien visitation and plug it in as spiritual, or as gods, or angels, or demons, or devils, or anything in between. And maybe that's what we're looking at, that there are alternative explanations to some of our religious beliefs. Is that bothersome to you? I'm not trying to offend anybody's religious sensibility, but what if the things you believe religiously or spiritually are actually things that have a different explanation altogether? I used to also talk about how you'd see ancient cave art, and we don't know what the motivation was for some of the ancient cave art, and we're talking tens of thousands of years old. Was that cave art depicting a real thing? Or was that like a guy that was like me? He's a bard or a storyteller, and he's telling stories to the tribe and the children of the tribe of these giant, and he chalks it in, these giant monsters with bulbous heads. And then you see all the people down here with their spears and everything. Is he talking about gods? Or is he interpreting as gods, alien visitation? Or is he making up a story? Because he's just making up a story like I do. I make up stories and I write them and I draw pictures to go along with them. So our approach to the unknown, and I've only got a few minutes left for the radio audience, and then we're going to get out of here and stick to the Facebook channel for now. If you're over in Facebook, I think everybody is. We'll stick over there for the Captain's Cabin for a bit. So in certain ways, the study of the anomalous or the paranormal has followed a really similar approach as science. It's been divided into subdisciplines that are differentiated by the types of manifestation and or their given interpretations. And so variability has mostly been taken to represent distinct an unrelated phenomenon? Do you have a looping playback of events that seem ghostly, or do you have interactive? Those are two different categories right there. So each discipline has been further fragmented by different theories that are backed by advocates who either dedicate substantial time and effort to advance one theory or the other. And the content that's been derived from such theories and research has, for the most part, been less than scientific. And in the sense that it's not based on rigorous and unbiased investigation and or reporting. And this has mostly led to speculation, controversy, to further the obscure that which was already a mystery. It's like I look at the Bigfoot shows sometimes, and they're tracking a Bigfoot. Well, this is obviously the nest of a Bigfoot. Now, they might be right. This is obviously the nest of a Bigfoot. And because you can see deer bones around it. And as we know, Bigfoots eat meat. So they hunt deer and they eat them. Well, it's like, and the Bigfoot community does this, or the Bigfoot communities do that. And you ask the question, well, how do we know that if we've never actually found one and studied them and entered their tribe clairvoyantly or physically to give you an anthropological study of communities of Bigfoot? We don't know. So that's what this falls under, that there's a lot of really subjective information that gets put forward as this is so. It's mostly led to speculation. And there's rigorous belief systems have been built around this. And so with the anomalous, it seems that a reductive approach doesn't seem very favorable, as it's not yet been determined how much of the phenomenon encompasses and or how far it permeates. Yet the reductive approach is the road most researchers have taken. And few have considered the idea and investigated the phenomena with the possibility that the various kinds of manifestations could represent parts of a whole, a single source of coordination between sources. Some researchers aren't even interested in the various types of phenomena. And Cannon wrote about this. He said, many investigators study only sightings and physical traces, such as landings and stop there, and other investigators study only abductions and stop there. And we're going to go on to the captain's cabin. So all of you listening over on the radio, I've got to bid you a hearty farewell. Live long and prosper. Join us back here on Facebook.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
It's a beautiful morning. I think I'll go outside for a while and just smile. Just taking some clean, fresh air for get inside. If the weather's fine and you got the time, it's your chance to wake up and plan another brand new day. Either way, it's a beautiful morning. Each bird keeps singing his own song. So long, I've got to be on my way now. No more just hanging around. I got to cover ground, you couldn't keep me down. It just ain't no good if the sun shines and you're still inside. Still inside. Still inside. Still inside.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
Yes, this prolonged ad break, has been sponsored by Grumpy Tires down in Louisiana. You need new tires, you need a tire repair, you need, a good cup of coffee, go see Grumpy. Grumpy Stack. Is he even here tonight? I didn't get a chance while I was talking to look through and see if he made it in tonight or not. So we lost a few people in transit, but that's okay. Some people can't stay that late. This is the captain's cabin. It's going to be abbreviated. It's not going to be a long captain's cabin. I'm still catching up on my sleep from working the night shifts to try to make some ends meet. It's a funny thing, and I've mentioned this before, when you're working at the gas station, and it's fine. It's a good corporation. They've got over 1,000 stores. They're run like slick machinery, and it's very well done. Very nice surroundings to work in. But it's gas station store clerk attendant. And so as I'm working, I don't just do the cash register, though. You got to, there's everything. It's like you got to check everything that's food. They have all their food and their to-go food and meals and all of that stuff. You got to check it for dates every day, replace, and you got to restock. So you're restocking the donuts and all of that. But there is a kitchen where they make some of the hot sandwiches and stuff. They take care of that. You have to check all the slushy machines, the shake machines. You got to sweep and mop the floors, and sometimes run the big machine that cleans it. You got to go through the whole store and make sure you front everything, make sure everything looks good. You got to restock the meat shelves. You got to go back in the cooler if you have more than one person working. Now, I've been the only person working the floor other than 2 kitchen people for the last week. And so you can't really go back in the cooler because you might have customers walk in. We're open 24 hours. Excuse me. And so, but you got to restock all the breads, the eggs, the milk, the butter, the sour cream, all the different kinds of. Did you know how many different kinds of energy drinks there are? Soda pops, all of that. It's all got to be restocked. You got to do the coffee, and there's 4 big coffee things. Got to clean those every night. Start them up at 4 a.m. And then, I just saw Professor Bauer has come in. He's in the room with Field Guy. I might bring them in, and I'll finish my little rant here as I'm going. Once I can, I'm going to remove this this banner. There you go. Boom. So it makes room for everybody. And let's bring him in. Professor Bauer and Field Guy. Welcome, guys.
Gentlemen.
How you doing? Well, anyway, I'm saying, so I took on this little extra job because the last 2 quarters of my business, which I've been doing for 40 years, has kind of gone concave. And it's no illustrations for books because everybody's using the guys that can do AI in Singapore for $5 a piece, whereas I charge $400 a piece for illustrations. And so you're running into a lot of that these days, and that'll go through its phase, I think, and phase back out. But so I'm standing there in the cooler a couple of weeks ago, and I'm stocking butter. Putting butter up on the shelves, pushing them to the front where the glass cabinets on the front.
Been there, done that.
And I'm going, here we go. I said, now I bring my good attitude. I always have a good attitude. I'm always happy. I'm always good to be around. Nobody ever sees me crabby, cranky, bitter, bitching, complaining, or anything because I have a good attitude. I believe in being there and bringing my attitude and making people's days. And so that's the way I'm this way. I talk like this at work. I'm like, hey, Professor Bauer, how you doing? Getting coffee today again? Yes. Let's ring that up for you. Thanks for coming. See you next time. That's we have to say, see you next. I had one of the employees, an older woman employee, say, you just said, see you now, see you later. She goes, you have to say, see you next time, because they'll send in secret shoppers that might say, you didn't say, see you next time. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I go, see you later and see you next time. And so I do that kind of stuff. And, somebody said I didn't clean the coffee pots one night, and they left a note. Train Scotty on how to clean the coffee pots because he hasn't done it for 2 nights now. And I'm like, I thought it was done during the second shift because it was shut down already. Oh, you left it for me to clean. Okay, got it. But so I got to clean the coffee pots. And so I put a note back and I said, I'm on it. And then I put a second note later. I said, coffee pots are clean. Shazam! And so, but what goes through my mind is, even though I have a good attitude and all of that, I look at all of that. I'm a store clerk. I'm a janitor. I'm a restocker. I'm a whatever and a whatever and a whatever, all rolled into one, taking out the garbage, whatever. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm putting butter up on the shelf from the inside of the cooler, I'm going, so this is the 40 years of culmination of my career and where it's led. So I'm now stocking butter. So it's frustrating in that respect, but at the same time, it's it's what I got to do. I'm doing it to bring in a little bit of extra cash. That'll bring in, working that job on a part-time level will bring in enough to pay my mortgage payment every month. So, but the only sad part is that, like right now, I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm off today until Sunday. So I got a whole week off. And then I work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And so those 3 days, that's a bitch on wheels, man, because you have to readjust your whole sleeping schedule to accommodate staying awake from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. and then drive home. And so you rework your whole schedule to do that. Wow, somebody spilled something. I just noticed. I have this big mouse pad about this big. My keyboard, my mouse sits on it, and I just saw something oozing out of the edge. Somebody spilled something on my desk and didn't clean it up.
Maybe it was your mouse. Maybe your mouse kind of
Maybe it was my mouse.
your mouse squirted all over your pad.
I think so. And
So
so,
so you're telling this story. I have one little quick thing that I did
All right.
during the pandemic. I did inventory at Home Depot in Durango. It was a 9-week inventory project. And they said, well, you know how to do this stuff. I said, I'm a CPIM, certified production inventory management. I eat this stuff. They said, well, we'll pay you, but you're going to work the graveyard shift. So I worked, it varied between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or midnight to 9 a.m.
yep.
But
That
it's
sucks even more.
all of a sudden I had to change my entire cycle to accommodate that.
Yes.
And I remember one night, and what was cool was it was only like 9 of us, 9 or 10 in an entire Home Depot. It was closed.
Nice.
So we were a team that went in and we had
naked around the aisles and nice.
Well, yeah, they had supervisors and stuff, but I tell you what, it was a bunch of, there were some young people, there was a bunch of old guys like me in there doing it too. So I remember one night, I was some of the stuff that we found when we did the inventory, we pulled all the product off of the shelves. We had all the big gate lifts, right? So we'd go up because, you can bend in a Home Depot, there's stuff way up there.
Sure.
And so we had the lifts and we had to pull stuff out and we had to look behind and find stuff. I found stuff personally that hadn't been inventoried since 2014 because they had the 2014 inventory tag on them. Right.
You found Bob, who hasn't been to work for 8 years.
Right.
You know what happened to Bob.
And so, but I remember one night I think it was probably the third weekend or something. And I'd hit the wall with trying to get the schedule. I'd got the schedule done, but I hadn't made the cycle change. And I was laying there, I was on the floor and I was looking under one of these big racks because I thought I saw something and we all had these grippers to pull shit out. And I remember looking back there and I had it and I thought I got it. And then the next thing I remember is opening my eyes, laying flat on the floor, staring at the ceiling. I had passed out for like 30 minutes and nobody found me.
Nobody knew you were there.
Nobody, if they did, they didn't say anything.
Where'd you pass out from?
It was 4 a.m. and it was like 3 weeks
You
into
just
this.
fell
And
asleep.
I just couldn't do it. My body hit the wall. And it was like, I woke up and I went, holy shit. And then I looked around, there was nobody around. I thought, well, maybe they just left me. Nobody said anything to me, but I passed out for about a half hour, just right there on the floor. Boom, gone.
That was like the story I've told about this was back in 1988. So I was 27 years old, going on 28. And I had the aerobics instructor at our condominium townhome complex, really ritzy, kind of nice place. And she was the aerobics instructor for the gym there. And she asked me out on a date for Saturday night. And I said, yeah, hell yeah. And so we were going to go out for a date. And she said, maybe we can even go to that little place you called Al's Breakfast in Dinkytown over by the university. And I said, breakfast? Are we meeting for what time? I go, oh, the light turned on. Oh, you want to go out on a date tonight and then go get breakfast in the morning? I am on board. And so I went to that afternoon, the afternoon of the date, I went over to my aunt's house. And she was an alcoholic. We didn't really know it. Back in my 20s, I didn't really know how to classify that stuff. But she cracked open a bottle of cognac. And we polished off the whole bottle of cognac, my aunt and I. And that's a icky thing to drink lots of. And she cracked open a second one. And we didn't finish it, but I go, whoa. And I got to tell you, I was the inebriate. And nobody had any judgment because we were all drunk as shit. And I said, I got a date tonight. And I said, I got to get home. It's in 2 hours. I'm 15 minutes from my house. And so I get in my car and I actually drove. I don't promote this, folks, and I'm not proud of it. Blah, 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 caveat, 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 disclaimer. But I drove home drunk and I had this tunnel vision. I was just so, I cannot get pulled over. I got to be very careful. And I made it all the way home. I was fine. And I rounded, I had a staircase. It was an oak staircase that went up to the master bedroom. And it had a landing, 3 steps up and a landing, and then it turned and went all the way up. And there was a railing there, and it had these globes, these ball wooden oak globes on the banister corner. And as I turned to run up onto the landing and go upstairs, I lost my balance, drunk. I remember I grabbed for that globe because I'm falling. My hand hit that wooden globe, went, and I just slid right off of it, hit the floor, like Professor Bauer laying in the warehouse. And I'm laying there like this. I still have my coat on and my jeans. I had high top tennis shoes. We're talking 1988, folks. And and I'm laying there laughing, going, okay, get up. You got to get ready for this date with Tammy. And I opened my eyes again. It was 6:30 in the morning. I had totally missed the date. It was like 12 hours later. And from when I had fallen, and I was in the same position, just laying there like this. This is before cell phones, folks. So I had an answering machine. She had called a couple of times. One about 20 minutes after I should have been there to get her. And then again about an hour later and said, I guess you're not coming. Yes.
I need my work keys.
Your work keys.
I work tomorrow and I need my work keys.
You're talking to me indignantly like I have something to do with that. I have no idea where your work keys are.
I've looked everywhere. So I'm at the point where I'm going to need to tear the
Were they with your, pardon me, folks, were they with your keys that went missing?
No, I don't have any missing keys.
Oh, you said you couldn't find your keys the other day. You had the chain, but no keys on it.
Yeah, those weren't with it, no.
Did you look on my keychain? Because somebody added the mail key to which never existed on there. You can check and see if they're there. Do you need my help? Okay, I'll be done here in a few minutes. I'll give you a hand. That's Rainey is missing her work keys. She works one day every 2 weeks at the thrift store. And she's got keys to set it up, and now she can't find them. So I'm going to go help her with that.
They're somewhere.
The nice thing, by the way, about this spill that somebody did on my desk, it's all the way over here under. I'm just noticing. I've got equipment, peripherals like this sitting in dripping water. So
that's not a good thing. They don't do well with dripping water.
No. So anyway, I was just comparing stories. So
well, Scotty, I just called in. I just called in to defend you or me or both or whatever about you getting banned or put in the closet for a week. Is that the excuse? Is that what they sent you? It was from that piece?
It was from that piece, and it was medical misinformation, they said.
Wow.
So I've still contested it. I've recontested it. And I said on the basis of we weren't even talking about anything medical. It's not medical misinformation. If it's anything,
it is an actual. It's an actual document. It's actually true, and it's actually real.
Talking about documentation that said they were trying to hire in Ukraine. Why is that medical misinformation?
Makes no sense.
Wow. There it is. Well, so I'm off until Friday, but over there. But I've been working on putting the whole show up over on Patreon anyway. So
yet at least do some shows on Rumble. I mean, the Rumble.
I've heard Rumble is a good place to go.
Growing very nicely.
So
a lot of the folks that I watched on YouTube have moved to Rumble, and I'm now watching them on Rumble.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. We'll see what happens. YouTube. I got 1,000 shows up over there. So don't want that taken down because, I talked or a guest mentioned something that you're not allowed to talk about on here.
Well,
You
you
can't
know, you can
express
move all
opinion
those
on
shows over to Rumble.
Yeah, I'll go take a look. I've never even opened up Rumble. So
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's been growing. A lot of the people, most of the people I follow have, if they've got their YouTube channel, they've got their website. They've also moved everything over to Rumble, and you've got Crowder's over there now.
Yep.
Um,
Don Bongino's over there.
Russell Brand's over there.
Russell
I mean,
Brand is over there.
they're lining up some cool stuff, but
They are. And as long as they keep their hands off of free speech, they're going to gain a lot more people, I think.
they are doing a great job so far. In fact, one of the things about the on YouTube, they take, if somebody does a donation, a thanks or super chat essentially on
Mhm.
YouTube, YouTube takes 30% of that. Rumble takes 20%. But at the beginning of this year, they suspended all those charges, so all of the content creators keep
Nice.
all of the
Actually
money
get
that
to keep
anybody
the money
donates.
that's given to them. That's nice.
That's right.
Hmm.
They're doing it for the
nice.
entire year. And it's like, well, now there's somebody paying attention decision.
Yes. I
Yeah.
like that. I'll go look into them. I've never gone over there and looked them up. So
Yeah.
to see what the ins and outs
I've never
are.
been on there either.
But I have been setting up my Patreon page, which, there's so many different things to look at. I see a lot of creators are using Patreon. You can put free shows up there. You can put shows you charge for.
Yep.
And I've seen so many, and I've talked about this a couple of times already, but in going through all the different kinds of podcasts that are over there on Patreon, I'm seeing a common thread seems to be podcasts that have 25,000 or more followers, and they're charging $4 a month a piece for those followers.
Mhm.
And they're making, raking in $100,000 a month gross
Mhm.
on Patreon.
Mhm.
And I thought, is this a good way to help fund the effort so I can do more? And Daisy asked, so do you think someone could have reported you? I found former friends were. I cleaned house, blocked, and restricted. Yeah, it's either that. And sometimes you get, when you get the spam callers coming in, the troll callers, they're doing that to try to create havoc. They'll say something that's not supposed to be said on YouTube. And all of a sudden, there you are with a hit against you. So, and people in the chat room will sometimes talk about things I don't even talk about, and I get hits on that. I go, well, where was this scene in the video? It's at this point. And then you look at the chat room, you go, oh, somebody's talking about whatever over there. You can't talk
That'll
about
get me-
that.
That'll
And
get me.
I hate that you have to be that way for the sake of narrative. So anyway, there it is.
Well, it's for sake of making, trying not to get those who are easily offended and need other people to manage their emotions for them.
Yep.
Twisted, because that's the only place that any issues as far as speech is an issue. It's you have to be sensitive to those who are overly sensitive.
Yes.
It's like, well,
That's it.
and haven't got their shit together. It's like, well, look, how much longer do we need to put up with people who require extra putting up with?
Right. Shouldn't have to.
Longer. I mean, it seems to me that the peeps are pissed, and there's a growing sense of I've had enough.
Yeah.
This is, you guys have gone to the extreme. You've pushed the envelope, and you've caused far too much interruption, interference, and irritation. And therefore, and you don't deserve it. You're not offering anything for all of this interruption,
That's right.
irritation, and annoyance, and so forth. What are they offering? They're offering that you must change in order for them to be happy. Well,
that's right.
I don't give a fuck about your happiness. I am happy. It's about mine. And your happiness, what you define it as, which is clearly got an issue, is infringing on my happiness.
That's it. That's it. And I'm going to tell you this, my happiness hinges on my wife's happiness. I hear a little stomping around up there. I'm going to go help her find her keys.
You hear the
So-
mama thump?
Yes. So folks, we're gonna call the captain's cabin. I did say it was going to be shorter tonight. So we'll see you again back here tomorrow for Robertson at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. And not quite sure how we're broadcasting that one yet. Probably through Wendy's Facebook or I'm sorry, YouTube page. So we'll get that all taken care of. We'll make the right announcements. Field guy, thanks for being here, brother. Talk to you soon. Professor Bauer, good to see you as
Live
always,
long.
brother. Live
Thank
long
you,
and
brother.
prosper. All right, and folks, we're out of here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. Thanks for bearing with the change and things. Nobody likes change, but there we go. We've changed up a bit for tonight because of the whole YouTube scandal. And so having said that, I'm out of here. Talk to you tomorrow on Robertson. Live long and prosper.